aspects of culture. Don't worry, this talk will not attract sharks or bears. Sometimes when I think about menstrual stigma, I think of this one day in the 8th grade. I was at a friend's birthday party, and I believe it was a game of truth or dare that led me to touching a boy's face with a tampon. I took it out of my purse, unwrapped it, and touched the perfectly clean cotton to his face. And when he realized what it was, he screamed like I held a knife to his throat. This stuck with me because, I'd always known that periods were taboo, but I had never seen how ridiculous the manifestations could be. Sorry. Period euphemisms are fascinating. The world has over 5,000 weird sayings that people come up with just to get around mentioning menstruation by name. In America, we might call it Aunt Flo. In France, it's defrosting the steak. In Denmark, you might hear communists in the gazebo. I used to think Crimson Tide was a euphemism, but turns out, actual football team. Now, if we're too ashamed to talk about our periods, we won't want to talk about the supplies we use to manage them, right? I'm not a stranger to the put your tampon in your sleep when you get up to go to the bathroom trick. And companies like Tampax have been innovating quiet wrappers so that no one else in the bathroom has to know that you're on your period. Despite ingenious improvements to our feminine care products like this one, the path to improvement for the products that we use and need has been a slow one, at least in the mainstream. For example, speculation has been mounting questioning the safety of our tampons. Proponents claim that the bleach used is toxic and that the rayon cotton blend is abrasive to the skin. But what little research we have on the subject isn't very clear. Why? Because if we don't want to talk about periods, we won't want to research them. We still largely use disposable pads and tampons that create waste in our environment and take a similar toll on our bank accounts. To put this in perspective, let's say you have your period 5 days out of the month. You change your tampon every 8 hours at the minimum for health reasons, so that's 3 times a day. At the end of the year, you're stuck with 180 tampons that you've bought and thrown away. That doesn't account for longer periods, changing them more often, or using a pad and tampon at the same time for a heavier flow, which happens. There are more environmentally conscious alternatives to feminine care, but they've yet to break into the mainstream as much. OB tampons, which are more popular in Europe, don't have an applicator, so they cut down on plastic waste from the wrapper and the applicator and use less cardboard because they have smaller boxes. Menstrual cups, which have actually been around since the 30s, can be reused for years and just need to be washed out at the end of the day. Similar to the newer period underwear that absorbs blood and you just have to wash it out and reuse it. These are less common, partially because they're kind of newer, but also because people don't want to take such a hands-on approach to dealing with blood. But what happens when you have your period, but no pads, no tampons, no menstrual cups, nothing? What do you do if you can't afford them? According to Plan International, 1 in 10 girls in the UK can't afford basic menstrual supplies. In America, food stamps don't cover pads or tampons, so what do you do when you can't afford these? You don't do anything, really. You stay home from school or work for a week out of the month. Homeless women or trans men have to find creative ways to stay clean on their cycles, using money that was meant for food on products, stealing products, waiting for outreach services, maybe making period supplies out of things like socks that they have to rinse out in the restaurant bathrooms. And while there are no tampon exclusive sales taxes, many countries and most states in the US place tampons under a general sales tax, but they're not exempted as a necessity the way that food or prescription drugs may be. You may have heard this dubbed the tampon tax, coupled with outrage over the way that some places exempt candy as a necessity, but not tampons. And this is really just the product of industry lobbying that I guess Big Uterus hasn't broken into yet. You would be surprised how many girls know little to nothing when they start menstruation, and that might not seem like a big deal, but you know when you're 11 and suddenly there's blood in your pants and you think you're dying? It's a great time. But really, when I was learning about periods in school, I felt like they merely glossed over toxic shock syndrome and endometriosis, both very real, painful, and potentially life-threatening illnesses related to menstruation. All these issues are more serious in the developing world, where ick factor is outweighed by traditional customs. Here, if you can't afford period supplies, you stay home, maybe using leaves or sitting on cardboard to control your flow. But missing school in these areas has more dire consequences. It means sacrificing education, maybe becoming a child bride. UNESCO estimates that 10% of girls in sub-Saharan Africa will miss 20% of the academic year due to menstruation. And 23% of girls in India will drop out of school due to lack of access to proper menstrual supplies and bathroom facilities. Girls in these areas commonly use rags for their period blood. They reuse the rags, but often feel too ashamed to properly wash and dry them in the open. So the rags breed bacteria that can cause infection. In a UNICEF and World Health Organization survey, 90% of girls in India who reported using rags were unaware of the importance of properly washing and drying them in the open to kill bacteria. In Nepal, the practice of chapati requires that girls stay outside of the home and away from main water sources during menstruation because their blood is considered impure. This means staying in huts or barns where you're more exposed to the elements or intruders. Chapati was outlawed in 2005, but many still practice it, especially in rural areas. And in the past year, the New York Times has published stories of girls dying as a result of the practice. One by asphyxiation from the fire she built to stay warm in her hut, another from a snake bite she sustained sleeping in a barn. And I myself got my period while I was in Mexico for a wedding, and my mom got me pads from a local Walmart-like store, and they're all tiny. They might not look that small, but I just have small hands, I promise. They're all tiny, and I thought it was a joke, but she said that that's all they had in the giant store. And I got by fine because I had tampons from home, but it really made me wonder how you get by day-to-day life when you're only equipped to handle a minimal flow. And while we see most bodily functions as unfit for polite discussion, is there another factor that makes periods so taboo? Hint, hint, it only happens to the female body. While the origin of menstrual taboos is unclear and likely varies across culture, conjecture ties the origin to the patriarchy. Not to get all angry feminist on you, but feminist icon Gloria Steinem posits that if men could menstruate, the process would be revered as powerful and honorable, because sexism has no logic. So the way we talk about menstruation is going to reflect our societal gender biases, right? This means the way you may cite menstruation as making a woman too emotional to be president. If a man could menstruate, it would make him more powerful because he could endure the pain or something. Now, this may have been a bit of a downer, I'm sorry, but luckily there are people all over the world doing their best to make the world a better place for bleeding uteruses everywhere. In the UK, where you may call your flow flying the Japanese flag, 18-year-old Amika George has started the Free Period movement, campaigning for free pads and tampons for girls who qualify for free or reduced lunch. The nonprofit Days for Girls has delivered reusable period supplies to girls in over 116 countries. Their pads unfold and have, like washcloths, and have big patterns on them to hide stains, so they can be washed in the open without shame. They have 50,000 volunteers making the supplies, and their kits may include the pads, menstrual cups, soap, and all of the materials one would need to maintain the supplies. They have offices and enterprises around the world to more directly serve communities. In India, India's minstrel man, and yes, this is real, noticed the way that his wife would hide her rags and shame and wanted something better for her. Unfortunately, in his area, store-bought disposable pads were seen as something exclusively for the wealthy, so he just decided to make his own. After hard years of research, he found the right way to make a pad and a machine to produce them cheaply. He sold over 1,000 machines that employ women and allow girls' schools or other groups to make their own pads and then just sell their surplus. Also in India, Aditi Gupta wanted to fight the shame and secrecy that she discovered along with her period. So she created the comic book Menstrupedia as a culturally sensitive way to teach kids about menses and puberty. The book has been integrated into the curriculum of 70 Indian schools and translated into 11 languages. Here in the States, the nonprofit Distributing Dignity has supplied menstrual supplies and bras to homeless women in 52 cities. The founders used to take office workers, homeless shelters for women for job interviews and noticed that they didn't have bras to wear underneath in the saddening lack of menstrual supplies, so they started drives to get them pads of tampons. I really like this one. The Society for Menstrual Cycle Research was started in the 70s by women across different disciplines of research to find out what we need to understand better about periods and how to properly educate the public and public policy for the betterment of women's health, as well as work out problems within the research community about how we study periods. And now you may be wondering, what can you as an individual do? Of course, you can support the organizations that I mentioned here and any that I've probably left out, but you can also change the way that we think and talk about periods and take the shame out of it. It doesn't have to be gross. Maybe if your friend complains about cramps, offer your sympathy instead of your disgust. Maybe support sex ed programs that actually teach female biology. At the very least, just don't panic at the sight of tampons. But one thing is clear, we need to make a change. Period.